folks, Coach Nate here. Welcome to this week's episode of the Battle Plan Podcast, where the aim is to encourage you to endure through challenges while inspiring you to live up to your fullest potential on your way to healing and wellness. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. Hey humans, welcome to this episode of the Battle Plan Podcast, where our aim is to encourage you to endure through your challenges while inspiring you to live up to your fullest potential on your way to healing and wellness. The goal really is to provide you with strategies, insights, views for myself and those who I'm fortunate enough to have as guests to equip, arm, provide you with tools and resources to navigate your life journey so that you can heal, that you can be the best version of yourself, more than a cliche, but a purpose in life. And as you've heard me say often, to live your best life on purpose now in the present moment. Today's guest, I'm very, very excited to be able to introduce to you and share this time with a gentleman I met on Clubhouse recently. That is a great application, by the way, Clubhouse. If you haven't been there, you really should. So much in the right rooms, transparent, vulnerable, open, sharing and healing and insight and interaction that occurs there. Wealth of knowledge. So a little plug for Clubhouse. Jump on the app if you haven't already. As I mentioned, today's guest, just an incredible gentleman with a impactful, powerful story and a impressive mission, a very heartfelt mission. Matthew Chenard, who is I've been inspired by. I know you will too. And so, without going into too much more, I will say that Matthew is about helping people to live with purpose, pursue their passions, and share their gifts. All things that are very near and dear to my heart. Matthew is the owner and CEO at Greater Purpose Health and Fitness. And I'm not going to go into a long bio on Matthew. I want you to hear directly from the source. I believe he goes by Matt. And so welcome, Matt, to the show.
Thanks, Nate. I really appreciate being here.
I really appreciate your taking the time to be with us and share with us. And I'm just honored to have you on this episode. I'm going to start with asking a question that generally gives insight to who an individual is, and that is just simply, who is Matt?
Yeah, this question is a good one. I often ask people on my podcast this question too, or just people I'm close to, and it's interesting to hear responses based on, sometimes we use titles, sometimes we use what we enjoy. But like you mentioned, I am passionate about helping people live with purpose, pursue their passions, and share their individual gifts with others. So that's a mission. I'm on a mission in the next 3 years to help 200 people with that, maybe more. I am a husband. I have a wife. We live in Canada, and it is currently minus 45 with wind chill. So my truck had a check engine light that just came on. I just got it serviced. So it's just mad at the world right now. It doesn't want any more cold. Got a big dog. I played hockey most of my life, learned a lot of valuable lessons there, gained a lot of things, but also lost 2 things, which would be my teeth, my 2 front teeth along the way. But yeah, there's a lot of principles and things that I like to draw out of that as well. So I would also add in that I am very passionate about observing commonalities across different modalities and principles, and trying to create connections between ideas and people and people and ideas.
Wow. So it appears that we have more in common than I thought, being about purpose, passion, people, and gifts. Growing up in Minnesota, yeah, sure, don't you know, you betcha, where the temperature is very similar. We were neighbors. And I also have a fake front tooth, although mine wasn't hockey. It was a jack stand that was entangled in my jumper cables as I yanked them from the trunk on a rainy day when my car wouldn't start. So I learned to get my anger in control early. Talk about lessons, but wow, interesting. That I'm hoping that your cold weather season ends soon. Although, cold weather. One of the reasons I moved away from Minnesota is I don't believe in living cryogenics. I came down here to Florida to thaw it, and it seems to be working in any regard. Great quality of life. I will say that there's some very positive things to be said for that, and your family life that you described is obviously something that's important to you. You also described something when we spoke recently that I found very intriguing, and I want my guests to hear more about it. And that is the health and fitness flywheel. What is that? Can you share more about that?
Yeah, it's this ongoing pursuit and understanding for me that we often think we can attack one aspect of a human being or ourselves. So, for example, just work out and then we'll be healthy and fit, or just put most of our time into our professional life and become financially stable, or just eat well without exercising. So there's a lot of subcategories too within this, but the actual flywheel itself, I believe, now I'm nervous, I think it's Jim Collins. He came up with the flywheel, or he talks about it. Mm-hmm. Basically, if you picture a wagon wheel with 5 spokes, the idea is that there's 5 different categories that you have to put pressure on in order for the wheel to continue moving forward. Hopefully that's a good visualization. So if the one spoke was too close to the hub of the wheel, it's not going to roll as smoothly. And if I only put, as this example would say, time into my physical health, then if that spoke breaks, I'm going to be standing still. So the idea is to be as balanced as you can, but also understanding you have to get out of balance to be in balance. So I have to put time and energy, which is a currency or an asset we have, into my faith, into my physical being, into my mental health, into my purpose. And there is one more, yes, connection. So that's the 5 aspects of the flywheel that I've kind of come up with based on seeing different parts of the world that live for a really long time, and not just a long time, but a thriving time on Earth. So the blue zones in the world, I have to make sure I say this right, but centenarians, they have this highest per capita of centenarians, and they've studied these places, and basically they encompass all these things, right? They might not eat the most perfect diet all the time, but they're still in community, and they still have a faith-based community. They still work. They still have a sense of purpose. So it's not just one thing. It's everything that makes up a healthy and fit human being.
Very interesting. That so closely aligns with the health certification program philosophy that I knew what inspired me really to shift from being a executive leadership coach to more of whole person coaching, which is the now mental health coach, health and wellness, and that the primary foods and secondary foods, and the what you've described is very similar to that. The primary being spirituality, relationships, career, and then physical activity, and then the secondary, what we eat and ingest. And if one of the 4 primary are toxic, in the wrong job, in the wrong relationship, you don't have a belief system of faith to ground you, to be grateful for things, you can eat all the broccoli in the world, and it's not going to give you what you need from a health standpoint. And you, I'm sure, see that with owning the fitness center. People are trying to work on the exterior where there's plenty of work to be done on the interior. And it sounds like
Yeah.
that's where you're heavily focused on the inside of the individual. What drove you? What drove you to that? What led you to that? Either understanding, discovery, aha moment, or how did you arrive at that was the path for you?
Yeah. A lot of things, I guess. So my wife actually is in the process of sharing her story more. She went through difficult exercise addiction, eating disorder combo. So something that was so consuming that on the outside looks so good. Meaning it's hard to tell someone, it's hard to understand why exercising a lot might not be a good thing. So when a passion turns into an obsession, or thinking that if I just focus on this one thing and I, like you said, this outward appearance looks like I'm really healthy and fit, I mirror what the world is telling me to look like. That does not mean on the inside is a reflection of that. So that's kind of has played a role in that, and seeing her journey through that and hearing her story and her telling that, and knowing that we often chase these idolized things, like a certain amount of money in our bank account, a certain way of looking, a certain way of living, and feeling like that is what equals our fulfillment and our purpose and our joy. When in reality, if we had a better understanding of ourselves and we actually committed to doing things like exercise, for me, which would be like an act of worship and appreciation and gratefulness, chasing that instead, then the byproduct is, hey, maybe I'll look really fit. Maybe my bank account will be okay, but that's not the pursuit. The pursuit is the fulfillment. The pursuit is the purpose. And the byproduct may be these things, but we're not dependent on it. So that's kind of where it's all started, is noticing that we tend to just pick one thing and expect it to fix everything else. Right? Like we are plagued with chronic illness in multiple areas of life, like mental, I think spiritual, lack of social connection, and definitely physical, right? Like there's a lot of chronic diseases that are out there now that are highly preventable, and most are actually reversible, but it takes chronic habits consistently done over time to reverse them. But we like that instant gratification instead of the delayed gratification. We want to go to the doctor and tell us, hey, fix us. When in reality, it's my choice. It's my accumulation of choices over this amount of time that equated to this chronic issue. Now I have to take responsibility and use professionals' help, like a health and fitness center, to spend the time in exercise and eating right and connection and family and purpose. So hopefully that answered your question. There's a lot.
There's a lot. There's some very good nuggets in there. And if I could I highlight a couple of them. And one, it really sounds like when you talk about the externals, acquiring things, stuff, those are meant for enhancement, not fulfillment. Yes. If I were to just encapsulate the meaning, we too often get that reversed. If I get this car or this job, or as you've expressed, it was the exterior. If I'm this physically fit, I'll be fine. I'll feel fulfilled. And then you get there and you realize I'm not satiated. I'm not content. And it doesn't do it. And too often, to your point, the mental health issues that we see today are a direct result of people seeking fulfillment from tangible, temporal, and guess what? Even the human body is temporal. We're going to
Yeah.
return back to dust, the fastest decomposing mammal that walks the earth. Interesting that, yeah, I see that so often where people struggle with, thinking that that's going to be the panacea, and unfortunately, it's not. Um, you talked about purpose. What's your superpower? What is your how would you define your gift, if I
Yeah.
call it, or if you call it that?
Yeah. And just this year, I started to learn about words like zone of genius or your superpower. I think I am very empathetic to a fault sometimes. Whereas I have a hard time moving forward when I can tell someone's hurting and I can see it. But the big one for me in terms of, I think my businesses as an example would be visionary. I just started to notice that no one thinks alike, meaning that just because I see it this way doesn't mean someone else might see it. It's like someone might be very more tactile, where I am very up in the clouds all the time. That's my whiteboard beside me, and I write on it every single day. And I just love to do that, and it gives me energy. So if I could say my superpowers, I've created some gifting tests for my purpose shift business. And 3 that I've identified in myself is a connector, a visionary, and a guide. It's like a mentor. Because I'm empathetic, I can interact and I can ask questions. I can feel what they're feeling, even if I don't understand what they're going through. And even doing this before, so I should caveat that this would be hard for me to be able to say I am good at this. But I think we have to have some sort of ego and able to use our gifts, but then not get so carried away to think that we don't need help either. We can't lean on someone else for that.
Very interesting. You have such a profound sense of humility. I would be challenged to use the word ego to describe you. I see you more as an individual, world according to Nate, who recognizes the gift was given to you, provided to you from the Creator. We all have different names for him. I know him as God. And that gives me the confidence in my gifts to execute them, because I'm on an assignment. I've expressed to people I'm just God's errand boy. Yeah. But I'm fully and hopefully committed to executing the assignment that he has given me, and I'm going to do that with boldness. And that's just that I mentioned that because that's what I see in you. When you talked about empathy, I don't know that we can be too empathetic. That is also a gift, a meekness, and people don't understand. If they understand, the world doesn't understand what the true meaning of meekness is. It's powerful. It understands humility. It understands the limits, as you talked about, the limits of our ability, our innate ability, but the unlimited power, strength, right? We talk about omniscient, omnipresence, omniscient. I'm not saying that word right. But when we talk about the greatness, being everywhere, knowing everything, and all powerful. And if that is the source of your gift, then there's no limit to that, and you're carrying out a divine mission. I've discussed a little bit about purpose, passion, and gifts and weaknesses, as we're on the subject
Yeah.
of gifts. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. And purpose is, sometimes I hesitate to talk about it because it's really hard to define. I don't think we'll truly know our purpose while we're still on earth, right? Like, because it's a mystery. I had Matthew McConaughey said this in a podcast, I think on the Story Brand podcast. He said it's a mystery going forward, but it's a story looking back.
Oh yeah.
What I really like that. And it's like, well, I don't know what my exact purpose is tomorrow, but I can show up with purpose in this next moment, in this relationship, in this conversation, in my job, with my gifts, my passions. So I think it's more about who you are and what you do, and not what you do exactly. I think we get so caught up in thinking my purpose is what I'm doing. So my purpose is a CEO of this gym. No, it's just something I do. It's a platform I've been given to pursue my mission and my purpose. And then I think passions, like pursuing passions, is really important, because I think God's given us those passions as kind of road marks. Like when you start to talk to people and you see that they're not as passionate about something as you, it's usually a pretty good indicator that it's a passion, right? Like if someone wants to talk about food all day long, like I love pizza. I love eating pizza. I should say that. Okay. But I'm very passionate about these conversations, and it just started to become more apparent over the past year, as I noticed not everyone enjoys these kind of conversations, but I really do. So being curious about those things, and I like that word, curious, like giving ourselves the ability to be curious and pursue different things and not having an agenda behind them. Like maybe I try this thing, but I'm not actually passionate about it. And that's okay. And your passion doesn't have to be your job either. We have many different passions. I love mountain biking. I love drinking coffee, eating pizza, having these conversations, but I might not be a professional mountain biker. That's okay. And the last one was gifts. I think you kind of touched on that too. It's what are those things that come naturally to you that someone had to try really hard? Because I believe we can become skilled at something. Like I am not naturally gifted at public speaking. I've had to work at it. I've become much better at it. But I knew that about myself. I knew I'd have to work at it. Whereas doing whiteboard stuff and more visionary stuff, it just comes easy to me, and it doesn't take my energy away. It actually gives me energy. So I think that's a good indicator to know if it's a gift or not, is does it come naturally to you? And when you watch other people do it, do you see them laboring at it? And does it give or take energy from you?
Interesting. Does it come naturally? Does it come easy? And does it give or take energy? So is that how then you tie into weaknesses? You feel that if it takes energy, that is considered, or how are you defining the weaknesses?
Yeah. And I think we don't have to show up somewhere into a job and say, this is my weakness, unless it's benefiting the whole. Like what I mean by that is it's something I would have to work at. Like I think we can put effort into something and get really good at it. I'm not a gifted teacher. I would say in contrast to mentoring type things, I would not be naturally gifted at teaching, but I can do it and I have to work really hard at it. But if I know my gifts and understand my weaknesses, it enables me to show up in businesses, relationships, churches, and know that if I'm weak at this, someone else is probably good at it. And having the ability to understand that, then I can reach out to others. And the more we understand what we're good at and not good at, the better the whole does. So the better my business does, the more I understand that I'm not good at everything. And I don't think I should have to be good at everything or take credit for everything, because then that's about me and not the actual mission or vision of the whole.
Very true. Very true. And we are all gifted in different things. We all have different abilities, and the best teams are comprised of, as I've built them, in when I was in the corporate world, best analogy I've heard. 5 out of 6 new businesses fail within the first 3 to 5 years. 5 out of 6 fail in the first 3 to 5 years. 6 out of 7 businesses started by Harvard grads succeed. 6 out of 7 succeed. And why is that? Because they're smarter? No. What they do is they assess where their strengths and weaknesses are. And they go out and they hire the best resource for where their areas of weakness are. And if we have, as individuals, I mean, you've laid it out there, if we can assess where our strengths and weaknesses are, and then complement, first have enough humility to say, I can't be all things to all people. I can't do everything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have every skill in the world. This is what I've been gifted or given the ability to do. And I believe it to be my purpose. I'll find out later, as you say.
Yeah.
And then reach out and give somebody else an opportunity to be passionate about that thing, to do work in, fulfill their purpose. They believe in their passion, and that's when it works well together. So it's very well put, very well stated. It makes me believe that you know what your secret is to living your best life. How would you define that?
I think it's what I've really noticed is not coveting other people's gifts. Like that's a big one, or thinking that someone else's mission is your mission or their goal is your goal. That, like we mentioned before, these finite things like money and houses, or they're exactly that. They're finite. And they're only going to amplify who you are. And if you don't know who you are, I think that's the secret, is you have to know who you are, right? Because if you have more money, it's simply going to amplify what you're already doing. Like if I'm not currently giving money, I'm not going to give more money once I have more money. It's just going to amplify what I'm already doing. So that's kind of going in a circle to say, I think the secret is to start to understand who you are and what you're passionate about, and stop chasing things that are finite. Start chasing the eternal stuff. So I'm faith-based, right? So what has God given me? What do I believe he sacrificed his son for in order for me to live? Because that is a roundabout way what really gets me. And I think this is how we start to define our purpose statement, is seeing people wasting their life, wasting their time, chasing things that don't matter, and waiting for things to come to them, and have this divine inspiration that this is exactly what I'm here for. We kind of got to get out there and see what you're passionate about, what your gifts are. So I don't know, Nate, if I answered any of it, but I appreciate you letting me go around in a circle like that.
You answered every bit of it in only a way that you can. And again, you're proof positive why I'm so inspired and honored to have you on this podcast. You such profound wisdom for the thinker, for someone who's really looking to live their authentic life, be their authentic self. I have to ask, I can only imagine with the challenges of this pandemic that owning a health and fitness center, it had to have some impact on you. So you've more than likely seen some adversity recently.
Yep.
How did you manage through that, and perhaps still are?
Well, I've first changed my language. So thinking and saying, what opportunity is there today to learn and grow? Because through this pandemic, we've been closed like not the calendar year, but I think it's like 5 out of 12 months, like our actual brick and mortar facility. So I could look at that and say, what's been taken away from me? But then I had a quick realization. It doesn't mean it wasn't hard. It doesn't mean I had really hard days where I just wanted to be like, nope, I can't do this anymore. But I had this quick realization that no one's coming to, like, no one's going to give it back to me. No one's going to come save me in that. Right there, but there is an opportunity in it. Like, I believe can be good in everything, but you have to look for it and you have to be the vehicle for that. So what has helped me through it is constantly living and acting as if there is something to come out of this. It might not be exactly what I want. It might not be, if I wanted it to, it would be 12 months of the year we would have been opened. And all my labor and hard work I'd be able to see it. But then having this knowledge or perspective has enabled me to shift my focus. So if I can't help people in the gym, we can do it online. If we don't have lots of clients for a while, well, I can shift my focus to my staff and help them find their gifts and weaknesses and develop them as people. I think as soon as we start to stop playing the victim, then it enables us to have a different perspective of what is possible. Like I think of it as stationary velocity. I picture a wheel over a highway, right? It's picking up speed, and you can't see the velocity or the momentum created yet, but as soon as it hits the ground, it's going to take off. So that's what I picture our gym is like right now, because we're just still in the preliminary stages of reopening, is that we're this wheel creating velocity, creating cohesion, creating vision, culture. And that when we have the opportunity, then we'll almost catapult ourselves towards our mission faster.
Interesting. So your view on, rather than looking at what has been taken away, what isn't there, looking for what is to come, to me, it sounds like you're building in a time of the outward destruction. You're inwardly building. To build something, you have to have a blueprint. So that ties into what you spoke to of purpose. Personal, marriage, and business blueprinting. What is this? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, us being both in business, we know the importance of a vision and mission and values, core values. Mm-hmm. But how many people would you be able to ask on the street what their core values are, what their vision is, what's their mission, what are they good at, what's their passions, what takes their energy? I think this idea needs to be drawn out more into our individual beings. So I started with myself. So I personally wrote down, that's the paper behind me, my core values and my purpose statement. And then I started to draw it out bigger and bigger. Well, what are my passions? What are my 5 love languages? What's my Enneagram? Because I think we often get caught up on one personality test, but it's just data. It's just helping me create a better understanding, and help me grow into what I've been created to be. So that's the idea, is I just continue to build this blueprint, helping people understand who they are. And then that, as I did that, well, if we do that in businesses, or we could do that in businesses, or help our staff develop themselves in that way, how much better would the whole do? Because going back to what I was saying before, if we understand our individual gifts and weaknesses, then the whole does better. But also, as a CEO, I have to understand that not everyone's going to be as deeply attached to the vision of my business. But I can attach my individual teammates to their own vision and their own passions. To that then enables me to connect their goals to the bigger goal. So that's the organization one and the personal one. And the marriage one, I think it's really important too, is understanding what your spouse needs or your partner needs and saying, this is their love language. I need to know that, right? I need to be acutely aware of what that is. And I also need to know that how I see the world, like I mentioned before, might not be the same as my wife, Jaleesa, sees the world. As an example, she's very today focused, amazing work ethic, and can get stuff done. Where I'm very abstract and I'm 20 years in the future. And I'm like, well, if I drink this cup of coffee, this is going to do this 10 years from now, as an example. I don't actually think that. So basically what I see is individual blueprints can make whole blueprints. So relationships. So if I have my individual blueprint, my wife has her own individual blueprint, that makes the whole better. If each staff member in my gym, my fitness facility, has their own, that's going to make the whole better too.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It sounds like you're very big on planning, looking at all aspects of life, having a strong vision for the future. And that's how you create peace and stability. Many times stability gives us peace. And as much as we're talking about vision, what if we were to look back? What, if you had the opportunity, would you say, what wisdom would you impart, share with your younger self if given the opportunity?
Yeah, I would say, don't be afraid. So I alluded to that I played hockey for a long time. And this is going to be me sound confident, but I was very good, but I did not go as far as I could. And this isn't like way back in the day, I was this good at this. It's not that kind of story, but I was playing fearful. I was suppressing what I was good at because I didn't want to make a mistake. I didn't want to put myself out there. I didn't want to put myself on a pedestal. I didn't want to be seen as that person. So I played very safe, and in order not to make a mistake. So that's kind of the drastic shift I've had over the last, honestly, probably 5 years, is leaning into that more. Okay. So I was deeply afraid of public speaking, and doing things like this. Okay. So I know that, but I also know that there's good things on the other side of public speaking. It enables me to do this stuff, right? I wouldn't have this opportunity if I didn't put myself out there. Mm-hmm. Sure. When you put yourself out there and you're being vulnerable, you're going to get hurt. Like things are going to happen. And if I had the ability to tell myself, like, things are going to happen, you're going to make mistakes. People might get upset at you. They might say things about you, but keep going forward, because the more you do that, the bigger your comfort level is, and your perspective will shift and change, and you will be refined each day, becoming closer to what you were created to be.
Wow. I like that. You can increase your comfort level by making yourself uncomfortable, by leaning into areas that you're not comfortable with.
Yeah.
It helps if you're passionate about them. It helps if it feels like something you feel like you are meant to do. You're so good at speaking. Clearly, thank you. Strong in forming thoughts and expressing and sharing them. So it appears very natural. I would never know that was a challenge area of yours that you not told me. So
it's a skill I've had to develop.
Clearly, and have done so. That's phenomenal. One last question.
Sure.
Who is your hero and why?
Ooh. That's a hard one. I think I have a hard time naming one person. Honestly, I think it's a combination of acts I see multiple people doing. So it's attributes of the people. Because I admire a lot of people, and it would be hard for me to just say one. Like, I admire my parents, my wife's parents, my brothers, my sister-in-laws, my teammates, but I have an easier time talking about what I see in individuals. So I admire courage. I really do. I admire people acting in spite of fear and doing something even though they know it might not be a guarantee. So that's an attribute I admire. I admire patience and the ability to listen really well. So that kind of goes back to core values. So I kind of watch people, and I watch what I would like to encompass, and then try to mirror that in myself if I can. Because I, as I'm talking, I was trying to think of one person, but I think I would have a really hard time to just say one person.
Interesting. So different traits, characteristics, values of a variety of people, it sounds like, is what impresses you, what perhaps motivates or inspires you, as opposed to an individual.
Yeah, seeing people break free of what the world is telling them to be. And you talked about Clubhouse, and it's amazing to hear all these people you see on Instagram, and they're talking about the same things as us. Like, they struggle with the same things. But they've committed to pursuing each and every day something different than the world is. Like, they've stopped listening to what the world tells them to do and start living into their individual gifts and purpose, I guess. And I had a thought originally from before, but you're talking about discomfort, helping grow comfort. So I committed to being, my theme word for the year is discomfort, because I found there's a lot of comfort within this discomfort. And so I do ice baths, I do things like that. But that's what people see, and they think that's what discomfort is. But I truly think I am way more uncomfortable telling my wife I'm sorry first. That's hard. That's uncomfortable. That takes courage. It's actually outwardly easier to sit in an ice bath than it is to love someone without expecting something back. If that makes sense. So that's what discomfort means to me. It's everything. It is the gateway to growth in my mind.
That is an absolute profound point. It is easier to sit in an ice bath than to love someone without expecting something back. And the conclusion that you can draw from that is, when you sit in an ice bath, you have a clear expectation of something, what's going to occur, and it's not going to be fun. And it's that expectation. It's probably not going to be enjoyable. It's going to be very uncomfortable, and maybe even some pain involved. But loving someone and having no expectation, and loving someone unconditionally, is really, that is a great. Wow, that is an awesome point.
Thank you.
That's a mic drop. That is absolute. It reminds me of the story of the father talking to his son. Dad, I think I'm ready to get married. And the father goes, okay, apologize. And the son goes, well, hey, why? The father goes, apologize. Said, well, sure, but tell me why first. The dad says, apologize. And this went back and forth, and finally the son acquiesced and said, okay, I'm sorry. And then the father goes, okay, now you're ready to get married. Now that you can apologize without knowing why.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Well, there's a quote. I don't know where I saw it. It's probably Instagram. I like sticker, like bumper sticker quotes and stuff like that. But it was like, apology without change is manipulation. So,
absolutely.
and that's a hard thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
not apologizing and going into it expecting or just for the easy out.
Mm-hmm.
But going into it expecting that it might not be received, but that's not yours to control.
Mm-hmm. Complete and total humility. It's a difference between regret and remorse. Well, they share similar words, but regret is, I kind of wish that didn't happen. Remorse is, I'm sorry that it did. I apologize. I own my role in that. I have empathy. I have humility. It's commitment, and they're very different. So that's a good point in terms of the apology without change. Is you're just saying the words.
Yeah,
you don't mean them. You don't believe them, and they're not sincere. And I'd rather you not.
Yes.
In that case. So I want to make sure that our listeners know how to contact you. You had mentioned that apart from the health and fitness center that you do mentoring, coaching, there are other activities. So what are those services, and where can they find you? How can they reach you?
Yeah. So my Instagram's probably the easiest, at Matt Chenard. So MattChenard. And that's attached to my email as well. So the purpose shift, or my personal brand too, is it's being refined, it's being understood by the day. But I think it's mostly things like this, is helping people understand who they are, to live more purposeful, driven lives. Because that's where the joy is. That's where everything people want and are chasing is not at the next paycheck, the next raise, the next vacation. It is developing a better understanding of who you are and living into it and pushing heavy into that stuff without unapologetically. So that's what I hope to do for people, is develop a better understanding of who they are. And also maybe team members of their business. So that's kind of what I'm aiming to do with that. And the best way is through my Instagram to reach me.
So I strongly encourage our listeners to reach out to Matt. If he has made an impact on you, shared something that resonates with you, you want to hear more, you'd like to work with him, if you have any semblance of a feeling of that, more than likely you're his people and he's yours, and reach out to him. He is, in the short time I've known him, one of the most authentic people I've had the privilege of meeting. What you see is what you get. And just an authentic, caring, compassionate, God-centered person. There are people that speak of it, but I believe Matt to be living it. So encourage you to reach out to him. Matt, it has been an absolute honor to be graced with your presence, your insight, wisdom on this episode. I'm looking forward to sharing it with my listeners. I know that they will find immense value in it. Anytime we have an opportunity to share our gifts with the world to help enhance and better other people's lives, that is a life well lived. That is a day and a moment of value. That is an accomplishment, if you will. I did something good today, and I'm going to aspire to get up and do it again tomorrow. So thank you for your time and your insight. And before we wrap up, any last words of wisdom or anything else you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap up?
Well, I really appreciate being on here, Nate. The opportunity for that. I think words of wisdom would be pursue pursue that nudge. Like we all have this nudge every once in a while that we're supposed to be doing something, but then we wait too long and then we justify why we shouldn't. Because most of the time failure isn't that bad. You tried, it didn't work. You try something else. So be a little more curious in what that feeling is and pursue it a little bit more intently.
Not often people drop the mic twice in a conversation.
You're going to make me feel so good, Nate. I love it.
I'm just giving back to you what you're giving. Thank you. Thank you for
Yes.
that. Thank you for your time and your insight. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to us being able to have continued conversations. And just as a sneak peek for my listeners, look forward to an upcoming clubhouse room with Matt and I. We'll let you know when that occurs. Thank you again.
Yeah. Thanks, Nate.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode and were able to find some nuggets to help you in your pursuit of living your best life. For more information on my coaching and programs, please visit my website at natebattle.com, where you will find all of my social media links, including my YouTube channel. If you love this content, share this, tell somebody about this, show them that they matter and you care. It's been an honor to share with you. Now go out and live your best life on purpose. Now, be well.